Facebook.
This is going live on Facebook,
Okay.
but now it's giving me shit. And it's doing something up.
It's saying that it is now live on Facebook.
Oh, well, all that came through. Okay. I guess we're live. Hello, everybody. I'm not. All right. What's up, everybody? This is Shawn Wells. Thank you so much for joining me here, Shawn. It is
Yeah.
totally an honor to have you on. We met on a panel at KetoCon a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and so much appreciation for who you are, what you do. Shawn Wells is a sports nutritionist, master's in biochemistry, and he's a registered dietitian, and he's a master formulator. He creates formulations and has many patents for special formulas for health and biochemistry, and he really brilliant guy. And you can find him on Instagram, the Ingredientologist, and that's why the title of this is the ingredients of a pandemic. So we're gonna
Yeah.
talk about. We'll probably go, moderately deep here today, talking about what's going on in the world, um, and hopefully give some powerful tools for y'all to empower yourself. So welcome, Shawn. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here with you, brother.
Totally, totally. So first I wanted to. Where are you right now, and what are you doing?
Well, I live in Dallas, but I drove down to Houston despite what's going on and being quarantined. Wanted to help out on the COVID-19 situation. So I'm working with a friend of mine, Pavel, and we're working on getting testing out to the population in Houston.
Right. So you're getting testing done, so people can test themselves for. Is it individualized testing? How does that work?
Yep, individualized testing, working on like pop-ups and drive-throughs to both test for active COVID-19 as well as if you have the antibodies.
Cool. And how quickly can these tests be done?
Minutes. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
About 5 minutes.
Awesome. Awesome. So yesterday we were going to talk yesterday, but you were on your way down here, down
Yeah.
to Houston, and so you called me on the road and you're like, "Hey man,
Yeah.
we could do it right now, but I said let's reschedule." So thank you again for making this. And it's so interesting what's going on with everything, and I mean, things don't quite add up for me. I mean, we have a, we have a virus. So actually, let me ask you this: what is a virus?
Oh man, that's actually really difficult to explain. There is the RNA material that's in the virus, but like some people can define it as living, some people define it as dead because it's really like a weird. Uh, I mean, it's not like a species, It's not like it the way it replicates, the way it's proceeded in this world is so unique. Viruses are very difficult to stop because they're not like bacteria or cellular organisms, right? Like so they're unique coded material in something that isn't defined cellularly. So it's a bit of like an enigma as far as like how we understand it, but obviously like they've been around for a long time and they will continue to be here for a long time, and they continue to take over us as hosts and vectors and they continue to mutate and evolve, and it's quite the quandary like that we have with viruses in this modern world for sure.
So interesting. So my understanding of viruses is that a virus doesn't have its own hardware to act as a living cell. It's RNA surrounded by a capsid and a little like attacher deal that gets into our cells and is able
Yep.
to replicate its own stuff, from that. And it's interesting because we can't see it. We can't define it really. We have so much trouble defining it's living. No, it's dead. No, it's chemical. No, it's it's got DNA, so it's a lot of it. And so there's all this confusion about it. And thinking about we're we tend to be pretty scared of something that we can't see or define, and we don't know if we're breathing it in right now, and and there's a lot of fear around it. And what I've been thinking about a lot recently is the how this entire pandemic, just like the social aspect of it, is very viral in nature. When we
Hmm.
talk about it with the internet, and the video's gone viral, or that post went viral, or whatever, so we use it in that language as well, because we plant this seed and it begins to spread rapidly, and it's malicious in whatever way. And that's the reason I say that with this pandemic is from a social standpoint, is because we see people banding together and like shaming anybody who dares to question the news, or the legitimacy of things that we're being told. And yeah, what are your thoughts about that whole can of worms that I just opened up?
um, well, that's tough. I mean, there's a lot of, to your point, things do go viral because, uh, in terms of the news, in terms of the information we get, because of sensationalism, because of so many outlets, because there's so many voices, and it can create a lot of confusion. And I think there's a ton of confusion right now, and none of us really have the full picture because there's so much noise and there's so many so-called experts, and it does create a lot of noise in that sense. Like, there's obviously, if I was going to go with the most trusted resources, that would be the WHO, the World Health Organization, and the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. Those are probably your most trusted resources, but we're certainly getting everyone doing lives on Facebook, lives on Instagram, and like, there's people that are using these hashtags like crazy, and just trying to get their name out there. That are health coaches, that are like yoga instructors, that are people that don't necessarily have no on the mental aspect of this virus, and its impact on our society, on staying in shape, sure, but like, as far as some of this data that people are putting out, it creates a lot of confusion. There's so many sources of data and interpretation of the data that it's become quite confusing. So um, that's the problem right now. You put yourself on mute, Cal.
You're right, I totally did. So it's there's data interpretation of the data. And I mean, as far as statistics go, I just got something somebody sent me that said basically comorbidities, like if somebody dies of one thing, but they also had
Yeah.
or were suspected to or assumed to have COVID-19, that
Yeah.
also belongs on the death certificate, which of course drives the numbers way up.
Yeah.
And I just, as far as I like asking why, you know, and I know sometimes asking why you get publicly shamed for that, but I'm gonna ask you, like, why do you think that we're trying to drive the numbers higher on this?
Uh, Man, that's complicated. I mean, obviously it draws news sources, would certainly like that. And in terms of federal funding and medical dollars and vaccines and things like that, I mean, that's obviously going to drive revenues for big pharma and a lot of those situations. But if I was to try and legitimize why that is, then I would say that even if it's 1% of the 99% of why they died is COVID-19, the fact that it meant that they were on this planet one less day, you have to attribute some fault to Corona. Like so, I think that's where it gets legitimized, even if they were going to die the next day. The fact that it played some role in them having you know or earlier mortality is why. But certainly to your point, like, is that fair? Like that death should, primarily be considered, influenza or pneumonia or, that they were type 2 diabetic and obese and, all these other things that they had emphysema, like these other conditions and were likely to pass away anyway.
Right, right. So with this entire situation, I know things. I mean, things look a whole lot different in a lot of places, and I was speaking with Elizabeth Robinson earlier from Even Pulse, and she was talking about checking out finding the silver lining of everything, like the canals in Venice look beautiful right now. The smog over China, like, greatly reduced.
Yeah.
Same with LA. Like, I'm sure all over the place we have similar things going on, and it's amazing how really well our world is kind of shut down, closed down a bit. Um, and I know there's also a lot of like trickiness surrounding it too. Um, but I can't help but wonder, like, what how do I ask this? What are some of the ingredients to building to I don't know how to ask this, but what are some ingredients to this pandemic, this specific one?
And well, like, I mean, there's a lot of ways to answer that, but what's led to this? I mean, this is a respiratory virus, and it's part of the SARS family, and that was the flu that attacked China in 2003 to 2005, and then there was MERS, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, as well. Um, and then now there's this one, and this is kind of America's first taste of this. Last time we weren't as global of a population in terms of as much travel, the coronavirus seems to be more easily spread
Right.
than these prior ones, even though they were more deadly.
Right.
Um, so that's led to this becoming the pandemic that it is. It's not as deadly even as influenza, except in cases of, over 65 with, greater risks, like having type 2 diabetes, having autoimmune issues, having respiratory issues. But typically, for those under 65, without those kind of exclusions, it has a lower mortality rate than most all these other viruses out there. So, and that's a good and bad thing. Like, there's the potential for it to work its way through the population, and this um, we're looking at maybe 50 to 80% of the population may get this at some point, but at the same time, like, people aren't taking it as seriously potentially as they should, because people are getting it and saying, well, I don't have that much risk, and it doesn't hurt me, and I'm going to hang out with my friends, and they're not doing the social distancing, the quarantining, the isolation, and then they're exposing these people that are immunocompromised.
Mhm.
And that's where the difficulty comes in, is that these people that are at higher risk are getting exposed to people that are, you know, that think they're impervious. So that's been like it's a unique one. Like, it's, if this was an ultra deadly virus, it would have a very different way of working its way through humanity. And we'd have probably a different level of fear at all levels. But this is a unique virus in that it's easily spread, and you can be asymptomatic for 2 to 10 days on average. And, like, I think it's about a 5.1 day incubation time, and not show the symptoms, and be spreading it. Like, even now they're saying with talking, um, it's not an airborne virus, but it can travel on air through droplets. Um, some people confuse those things. If it was airborne, it would be way more problematic, because it could literally just be out on the air and survive there, like, for a long time. So um, it's a unique situation that we're in, for sure, and it's unique how people are reacting at different ages, different socioeconomic levels. I'm seeing it, like, just here in Houston. A lot of the homeless are still out on the streets, and they're congregating together. Whereas obviously the wealthier elite are, like, tucked away in their condos and homes. And you know it's like, how are we taking care of these people? And what's their exposure like, and how much are they vectors for this virus? So those are all interesting questions.
Right. Yeah. It's very interesting to have. Um, I mean, the incubation period also, that's how long it takes before we see any symptoms of it.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, we're able to still spread it from that place. And so what are, like, say we say we work in a hospital or we visit somebody in the hospital, what are some things we can do to prevent the spread of this, or we're visiting our grandparents or anything of that sort?
All that should be shut down right now. Like, you really shouldn't be able to visit in any way, like a nursing home, an assisted living, or a hospital. Um, and you either are there because you're living there in the case of an assisted living or a nursing home. And a hospital, you should only be there if it's dire times, like you need a ventilator. Really, like, if you go there because you're having acute symptoms like fever, respiratory distress, like, they're going to do everything they can to stabilize you and get you out of there,
Right.
because that's one of the worst places you could possibly be right now. in terms of exposure. So you don't want to be in a hospital. You don't want to be there very long, even with all the precautions and protective equipment and isolation and things they're trying to do to minimize all this. That's still like, I mean, you talk about hot spots, like that's a place you don't want to be right now. So even if you have active coronavirus, I mean, I would strongly urge everyone to to be at home if they possibly can be, to where it can be taken care of and you're not exposed at that level or exposing others.
And what if you have a loved one in a nursing home or a skilled nursing facility? Um, and like I have a friend who's trying to get his mother out of a nursing home and bring her back home right now. Would you recommend that at this point?
It's tough. Like I worked in nursing homes for 10 years and right now they're isolating them typically in their rooms. And if someone has to go out on a hallway, I would imagine that they're just doing one person on the hall, like to get them to a shower or, if they need assistance on certain things. Um, but obviously loneliness is already difficult in those environments. And socialization is already difficult in those environments. And you can argue that's one of the number one killers is loneliness. Like and so to be in that environment with this situation going on, that's very tough for the elderly. So um, getting them out, that just depends on their situation. I mean, typically they're there because they need to be there and they need assistance. Um, you know, on a medical level, on a mental level. They need whatever care, skilled nursing care. I mean, that's what they need. That's usually why they're there. But certainly, we can't visit them right now. But doing FaceTime if possible, or whatever Skype and whatever those kinds of things is, if they can get assistance with their CNAs and their nurses, that would be ideal. Is that they can communicate that way and get some actual FaceTime. So yeah.
Right. It's interesting being in this place where we're all social distancing, and yet I've been on so many Zoom conversations and FaceTimes and whatnot, like more than usual, which
Yeah.
is kind of awesome. I appreciate that. It's cool to have more people reaching out and more communication happening in that manner. But it's it's interesting how we're using a lot of this technology now that's been around and not really been utilized as much. And we're seeing this whole other lifestyle in some ways for a lot of people who are not um, used to diving into technology in this manner. And I think it's an interesting scenario that we have, and a pretty pretty cool scenario that we have, like people getting in touch with our current capabilities to be connected, um, and and to feel connected even at a distance. So I appreciate that, and I love what you're saying about bringing it to nursing homes in a big way, in a much bigger way, and having assistance done to help people use them to stay in touch with their loved ones, even from afar.
Yeah, hopefully that does change in nursing homes. Like I said, working there, like the loneliness is palpable. And when you're in like a 20 by 20 room, that's difficult, man. Like, that's a level of isolation and loneliness. It's hard to explain to someone. And when they're on lockdown like that, that's brutal. Like where you can't go outside and get fresh air, you can't go to the chapel.
Mhm.
like where they enjoy like just singing some, Bible hymns or, whatever it is they like to do, do arts and crafts and, things during the day. Like they're just locked down. And so hopefully like, this exercise that we're going through does change the way we can integrate some of these technologies to where they can, have deeper connections and interact more with family and friends. That would be powerful to bring that into their lives because they definitely feel isolated and lonely most of the year.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so. I mean, I'm hopeful that we'll see a lot of things improved upon as far as technology in places where it's needed, especially now because it's really in our face how needed it is. Um, and as much as technology, this connection can leave us feeling disconnected in some ways. It's kind of interesting also, like before we had a whole lot of FOMO, fear of missing out, and now that's off the table. Like there's nobody's doing anything, don't even worry about it, man. Yeah, so being home is just a normal thing that's happening now. So, we talked about how CDC and WHO are good sources right now, um, and I also talked about how statistics are interesting right now, driving up numbers. Um, and to back things up, also we talked about that this virus it's more contagious. It's easier for people to get it. It's more transmissible, let's say, and but it's less deadly than influenza.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what we're seeing is most of the people that are dying are much older in the older and immunocompromised situation, and those of
Yeah.
us
80%, about 80% of those that are in ICU level and mortality is 65 and over. Mhm.
and say we do get sick, when are we no longer contagious?
Well, that's like, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that that's fully answered. I mean, you would hope that once you're no longer symptomatic, but like to draw that out, like you would have to do testing. You have to do continued testing.
Right.
Um, we don't know exactly when that is. Like, you would say like maybe it's when your body temperature returns back to normal, like when your respiratory distress is minimized. Like, I mean, a lot. This is also new. Like, I don't know that that number is exactly known. Like, I mean, our 14-day quarantine is based off of like one case study of like the limo driver early on that supposedly went 14 days without having symptoms. And of course, the longer the incubation time, the more you're exposing way more people when you're not symptomatic. So that's the scary thing is like they're thinking now it's more 2 to 10 days and like I said, about 5 days on average. But the longer that incubation time, if it is possible to go 2 full weeks without symptoms, that's brutal in terms of like how much exposure you can have, especially in these crowded environments or, like, imagine like obviously like the first thing to get shut down was like, our sporting events like the NBA and, things like that. Like, I mean, when you're packed into small and, tight crowds, like that can be really bad because this does travel on droplets for up to like, I don't know, 3 to 5 feet. That's where like the whole like when you cough or sneeze or whatever, it gets projected out like 3, 4, 5 feet. And yeah, that's where that exactly that vampire cover your face thing comes in. Yeah, the world is a vampire. But you should cover, yourself. You shouldn't like cough or sneeze into your hands. You should definitely use the elbow or the armpit, for sure. So, but yeah, that's where the 6 foot isolation comes in, the social distancing, um, because that's supposedly far enough that if someone coughs or sneezes, that you should be okay potentially. So that's the idea.
So we're not sure about a lot of stuff about this virus.
No.
That's what's really scary about it.
Yeah.
Do we know why it's more contagious than other coronaviruses?
Yeah. It's one because the incubation time is again a huge problem. Two, it's sticky. The reason it's called coronavirus is like if you actually look at it, it's got like these stickers like all over it, like three-dimensionally. So it actually sticks to the respiratory tract really well. Um, which would be like through your nasal passages, like your mouth, like down into your lungs. And so it's going to like stay in your respiratory tract, and it's very sticky. Um, so that's what's problematic is, the incubation time, um, and the stickiness of this virus. Yeah.
Yeah. And we touched on this earlier, but a virus needs a host.
Mm-hmm.
And that host, if the host is immunocompromised, it's
Mm-hmm.
way more likely to infect the host and then replicate and then cause damage
Yeah.
in that host, and infect the host. So with that, what can we do to protect ourselves and to protect our loved ones?
The first and foremost is going to be isolation, quarantining, social distancing to the best of your ability. Like, and if we all can, distance for 2 weeks, then supposedly that should flatten the curve, so to speak, pretty dramatically. Um, but some other things that we can do if you are out in public, like, a mask can be helpful. It's not so much that it's helping you, because it can still get into like your eyes, and you might touch your face later, and all these different things that can stay on surfaces. Um, and it can certainly get around most of these masks, like unless you have like the high quality like N95 masks and things like that. But one of the things that it does is help, you talking, breathing, sneezing, coughing out. It's going to prevent that. It's also going to keep your hands away from those areas of your face, like your mouth, your nose, etc., and then you cross contaminating other surfaces. So it's ideal that we do potentially wear masks, and the CDC is revisiting that. They kind of said that that wasn't needed early on, and it doesn't protect you, but it really does, protects you on maybe some level, but I think it's more protective to others. And then from there, like I think some things that we can do like for ourselves, is work on respiratory function, deep breathing. We can eat better, avoid sugar, which compromises the immune system. Type 2 diabetics seem to be very at risk. Um, so avoiding, sugar, like I said, and maybe trying to be as active as you can, even though you're isolated. Can you like do some movement? Can you do some exercise, especially right after a meal? And if you can't get outside and take a walk, then, can you watch like a, YouTube video and do like a home workout? Use some bands, do some body weight only exercises, like do some squats, do some things like that. I think it's definitely good to be aware of symptoms, to track your body temperature, to, um, think if you do have some kind of acute respiratory distress that's different, fatigue that's different, and it's difficult right now with like fear and anxiety taking place, that people might have, a headache, people might have tight, lungs or whatever, just because they're stressed and they're anxious with the news going on. But it's ideal that you try and track your own vitals and see how you're feeling. Obviously, washing your hands as much as possible, doing that 20-second hand washing, using hand sanitizers, sanitizing surfaces, things like that are ideal as well. And then from there, for your own personal well-being, maybe as a preventative and a therapeutic is, doing things like vitamin C, especially IV vitamin C, vitamin D3, either getting sunshine or getting the supplement, taking zinc for maybe, 2 or 3 weeks, additional zinc to bolster the immune system. Some of the mushrooms enhance the immune system, and one compound in particular that I really like, it's called AHCC, active hexose correlated compound. Really powerful for immune system enhancement. Mushrooms have a lot of immune system boosting properties, including an amino acid called ergothioneine. There's also beta glucans. So they're really interesting in terms of their antiviral, antibacterial activity. There's colostrum that you can get that boosts IgG and IgA. That colostrum is meant to protect that cow, typically, or goat, is the two sources you usually can get early on. So you can get kind of that first 72-hour milking and get the colostrum as long as it's taken care of well, like frozen. And you have to read up on the quality of the colostrum. There's a huge variance, but there is some good companies out there. Those are some big ones. L-lysine is an amino acid that has a powerful effect on the immune system. And then antiviral, there's some interesting compounds like oregano. There's an oil of oregano that's pretty powerful with P73. And then monolaurin is a compound that comes from coconut oil, lauric acid. It has some unique antiviral activity. So those would be some supplements and things I could say you could do. And if you go into an IV clinic, you can ozonate and UV treat your blood and have it circulated back in, and that will remove bacteria and viruses and such. And you can do the IV vitamin C. You can do IV glutathione. Obviously, hydrating well from the IV is helpful. So, yeah, those are some things that you can do. And then also, it's been shown that doing red light therapy, like using the Juve kind of thing, is enhances the immune system, or using an infrared sauna can enhance the immune system. So, those are some things that you can do. One of the biggest things too is just getting sleep. Like listen to your body. Like, right now is a time that a lot of people are fearful, and just getting sleep is a huge one. That has a massive impact on your immune system.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we, Elizabeth and I talked about that earlier today, in our interview earlier today, is that right now we're in a place where we have lots of time to rest, and utilizing that time it's profound what rest does for our entire body. Put ourselves back into a parasympathetic state rather than being in a fear driven, sympathetic, like on Facebook, like and seeing news feeds that are triggering our fear response, or watching the news that's triggering our fear response. What's really important to us right now is choose what our sensory diet is, meaning what our senses are exposed to,
Yeah.
and what we're feeding our minds and our nervous system.
Yeah, your immune system is lowered on average by about 50% with just that fear response that you're talking about. But on the flip side, when you're truly happy, when you're in a joyous, relaxed mode, then your immune system is boosted well beyond average. Maybe it's boosted to 50% as well. Like, so that delta can be significant if you switch from, a fear state to an abundance state, then, you can have a dramatically different impact on your immune system. And obviously doing that deep breathing, like box style breathing, can be helpful at reducing fear and anxiety as well, and enhancing your respiratory function. So
Mm,
box style breathing is doing like the deep breath in. Let's say a 4 second box is 4 seconds in, inhale, 4 second hold, 4 second exhale, 4 second hold, repeat. So that's the box. You can do 4 second, 5 second, whatever your respiratory ability is, to where it's calming. And of course, you don't want to try and do such long holds or inhales, exhales that it's actually stressful. So, it differs from person to person, but it's something that you can work up to, and you'll reduce stress. You'll get yourself in that parasympathetic state. You'll improve your immune system, and you'll improve respiratory function, all of which will protect you in this scenario and in life in general. So
awesome,
yeah,
awesome, super appreciate it. We're at the top of the hour, and I want to hop off but I wanted to ask one last thing, and that's about N-acetylcysteine.
yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I think N-acetylcysteine is an incredible precursor to glutathione. And I don't think that oral glutathione is that bioavailable unless you're taking liposomal glutathione, or you have to take very massive doses of the oral glutathione. So I actually prefer N-acetylcysteine at about 600 milligram doses 3 times a day. But I told you before, the best way to get glutathione is to just intravenously get it if you can in a clinic. But obviously, all of that is very difficult right now, getting out of your home, getting anywhere like that. So, that may be something that's good advice down the road, but definitely N-acetylcysteine is a great one to get, or liposomal glutathione. Yeah.
Nice, appreciate that, absolutely. And I don't even think IV clinics are open right now. Non-essential business.
Right.
Probably not. Yeah.
So,
Well, Shawn, so good. Thank you so much. Um, you know, proud to have you on. It's such a pleasure. And yeah, where can people find you? I know
yeah.
the Ingredientologist
Yeah.
on Instagram. What
Yeah,
else?
look up Shawn Wells, ShawnWellS, on Instagram, or Ingredientologist. You'll find me, and then I'm at ShawnWells.com, and either place would be great. And yeah, it's sad that we won't be at KetoCon together this year. It's pushed off, but most things are pushed off. But we'll
Yeah.
find a way to carry on and still try and do great things.
Yep. And I know that both of us will. I'm very confident in that. So thank you so much, Shawn. And yeah, I'll see you soon, my friend.
All right, thanks, brother. Talk to you soon.